Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Rogue Agent Answers. My name is the Rogue Agent. Some people call me David Lewis, and every week I answer one of the many life insurance related questions that I've received from clients, from email subscribers on the daily email list, questions floated to me from across the interwebs, in the comments sections, which I know you're not supposed to read, or just interactions that I've had with people in real life over the past 20 years, which is a long time. And some of these questions I just scribbled down on scrap pieces of paper. Some of these are stuff I've written down on my phone. Some of it is on Post-it notes scattered all over the office. And every week I answer one of those questions. So if you'd like to ask your question, drop them in the comments section or join my email list for more life insurance tips and advice at monogenics.com. monegenics.com. And now for this week's question. Can I transfer my policy to my children before I die? Maybe. There are two ways to do this, and I guess you'd have to sit down with a lawyer and talk about some of this, the legal stuff. Financially, I can tell you there's a couple ways to do this that can make sense. So some policies have what's called a transfer of insured provision in the contract. So these are really useful if you want to pass an established policy onto your children. So when you transfer the policy, the insurance company is going to underwrite the new person, usually your child, but it could be your spouse or whatever. But let's say you're passing along to your child, and this question was specifically about the child. You are going to remain the policy owner, okay, until or unless you transfer policy ownership. But then you would transfer, you would no longer be the insured in the policy. It would transfer to your son or whatever. Here's an example of how these are typically written into the policy. So here's some text that I have from one of my policies that actually has this provision in it. It's called Transfer of Insured Rider. So the Transfer of Insured Rider provides the policyholder with the right to transfer or exchange a new insured in place of the current insured under the policy, provided an insurable interest exists between the owner and the substitute insured, and the new owner is not older than age 75, and evidence of insurability is provided. There is no annual premium for this rider. However, there is a cost due if the rider is exercised. So the cost of insurance will also change to reflect the age and health of the new insured. So those riders can be, they're not, not every company has those, but those riders can be really valuable if you want to do this kind of generational kind of thing. Another way to transfer your policy is to just transfer ownership of the policy to your child, and you sign it over. It's a form that you fill out with the insurance company, and you sign it, and they sign it, and then the ownership is transferred. You transfer to your child, and it's relatively simple, and you remain the insured with this strategy, but your child now owns the policy. So then the policy's mortality charges are going to reflect your age and health, not your child's. But otherwise, it accomplishes the same thing. Your policy transfers to your child. The difference is when you transfer the insured. So if you use the Transfer of Insured Rider, you retain ownership of the policy until you die, and then ownership you list your child as a contingent owner on the policy or whatnot, and then when you die, the ownership change, because the death benefit won't be triggered because your child is the insured. Okay, so then the ownership transfers to your child upon your death, and then it just continues, and he or she continues to own the policy, pay the premium, and so on, and thing just keeps going. It never actually ends and never pays out. Values keep accumulating inside that policy. The other way, when you die, if you're the insured and you die, then the policy is triggered, the death benefit is triggered, okay, and then there's a payout, and then your child then applies for a new policy and then starts a new policy. But ownership change, I guess the ownership difference is whether or not you want to have ownership change during your lifetime, or you want to have it change ownership upon your death. Another way to do a transfer of policy owner transfer to your children, become more indirect way, would be to transfer it into a trust, and then have your child manage the trust. And they're technically not owning the policy; it's more of having control over it, and they would be the trustee and so on. And there's a couple of other ways that are similar to that, but those are the three basic ways to do it. The two ways I just mentioned before, the first two ways are more of a direct transfer, because your child will actually own the policy. The trust is sort of an indirect it's not ownership, but it's an indirect transfer, because if they're the trustee, they have control over what's going on with the policy. So anyway, that's basically the methods to accomplish that, and that's it. If you have any legal questions about how this would be done, my suggestion would be to talk to your lawyer. And I am not a lawyer; I don't give legal advice. So my suggestion would be talk to your lawyer, get some legal advice about kind of what makes sense for your specific situation. But as far as the actual transfer and the contract provision, there's ways to do it, a couple ways to do it that are fairly simple and straightforward. Anyway, I hope that helps, and I will see you next week with another question. Okay, that's it for this week's question. If you'd like to add your question to the list, just drop them in the comment section or send me an email. And if you want more life insurance tips and advice, just head on over to monogenics.com, MONEGENIX.com, and sign up for my daily email list.